What is up, everybody? Eddie Barco here, and welcome once again to the Nebula Music Podcast. This is a show where I talk to some of today's most inspiring and influential musicians, and anybody who's doing something cool in the music industry. I invite them on the show with the goal of exploring their creative mindset and really understand what inspires them to do their cool work. Today I'm excited because I have Mr. John Mark McMillan joining me on the show. He's a very talented songwriter, a veteran of the music industry. He's written so many good songs. Some of them have gone platinum. Some of them have been picked up by very well-known artists and have gone multi-platinum. I mean, this guy's resume is insane, and I'm just incredibly honored to have him on the show to talk about his creative mindset and how he approaches songwriting. So if you're somebody who's working on your own music or maybe even thinking about writing your own music, this is definitely the perfect episode for you. So I definitely don't want to waste any time. Let's go ahead and dive right in to the conversation. What is up, everybody? Eddie Barco here, and welcome once again to another great episode of the Nebula Music Podcast. I'm telling you, I'm excited for this artist that's coming up, and I know I say that a lot, but like I always say, I'm excited that I get to talk to people that I admire and musicians that do really cool things because it allows me to grow, and I know it helps you guys grow. And so the cooler the people I can get on here, the better. And today is definitely no exception. I have a very talented, and I mean very talented artist joining me today. I have Mr. John Mark McMillan. How are you doing, man?
I am great, man. It's so good to be with you today.
Man, likewise. We were just talking a little bit earlier about the weather and all these bunch of random things, just how everything's happening right now. And I was telling you that I was going to try my best to give you a decent, half-decent introduction, and I hope that that was somewhat to your standards.
Yes, totally.
Perfect, my man. Well, John, I want to go ahead. I mean, normally I would love to just talk about you for hours, but I'd rather not do that today. I want to honestly just let you do most of the talking today. I want to go ahead and just sort of give you the space to just let me know like where you're from. I know that you're a very talented songwriter and you've been around for quite a bit and you've had a very successful career. So why don't we just start by getting into maybe where you're from and how you sort of started doing music, and then we'll go from there.
Yep, totally. So I am from Charlotte, North Carolina. I live here now, and I was born in Charlotte, which is a little bit of a interesting city to be a traveling touring musician. But I have a lot of family here, so it's been great. Because I've got kids now, and so touring, it's great to have family around for touring. So Charlotte is where I'm from. It's where I live, and I started playing music a little bit later than I think most people. Like most of the guys in the band I play with and people I interact with out in the world, I feel like they all started when they were young. I picked up the guitar like in my late teens, and I don't think I really started writing songs until my late teens, maybe even my early 20s.
Is that rare in the songwriter community to start?
I feel like it is. Well, I feel like a lot of people grow up with music, but I didn't really grow up in a musical household. So I feel like I was kind of late to the game, you know?
Yeah. Which I find rather surprising because I think in my world, when in the touring musician world, I think you are partly right where most people start from a very, very young age. And I don't know what a very young age would be. What, like maybe 9 years old, maybe 10 years old, somewhere around there.
Yep.
And then it is stranger to find people that pick up the instruments a little bit later in life. Why do you think it's strange for songwriters to start a little bit later? I mean, it sounds to me like you're a bit of an anomaly in that sense.
Well, I think that there's you got to do a lot of work musically before you start making the kind of music that you enjoy. You know, it's like you got to learn something about music. I did play the saxophone in middle school, but I don't even count. I mean, I love the saxophone, but I don't count what I did as music because I feel like I just did what they told me to do, but I really didn't learn the theory, or really pick up any of the music. I just they showed me the notes. They're like, play this. And I did, but I don't know that I ever caught the music that way. But I think that you have to have somewhat of a foundation before you can start creating. Maybe that's not entirely true, but I feel like most people do. At least a lot of the people I look up to, they started really young. And so by the time they were in their late teens, early 20s, the music part of it wasn't something they had to concentrate on,
Yeah.
and they focused more on creating, as I was still kind of learning music at that age. I mean, I was creating too, but that's been one of my challenges was early on. Like I didn't know guitar chords, and I didn't have great pitch singing, and all that matters a
Yeah.
little bit, when you're trying to write, you have the tools that you have, and when your tools are limited, you can still be creative. And I was, but at the same time, like, it's a lot easier for some of my friends who grew up playing because they seem to have this unlimited supply of musical vocabulary to, to
Yeah.
create.
You know what's fascinating about that? I just had a very similar conversation with I can't remember how to pronounce the name, so I'm not going to say it, but he's the lead guitarist for the Blue Stones. And
Hmm.
basically, we were having a similar conversation about how to balance or how one balances creativity without having all this knowledge. You know what I mean? Without
Yeah.
basically being self-taught, and then how do you get creative that way? And lately I've been seeing this topic bounce around a lot. Like, tons of people are talking about what's better. Is it better to be educated? Is it better to be in the middle somewhere? Is it better to not be educated and let your mind run wild, if you will? And there's so many examples from people from all those spectrums, people that are not trained and never get trained and create amazing stuff. And the same is true for the opposite. There's people that are
Yep.
mega trained and create amazing stuff. So then the question becomes, at least to me, in your opinion, do you feel like you were already experiencing creative freedom before you were trained? Because that's something I think it's really interesting to explore. So many people explain it in different ways. Some people find freedom in being educated. Some people hate that. They find freedom in not being educated in terms of music. You know what I mean? And so for
Yep.
you,
Totally.
how did it feel like for you? Did you feel like you were limited, like 100% limited without the education?
I don't know that I felt limited. I think that what can happen is when you're really technically good, you can lean on your technique and not push yourself to be creative. I feel like everyone has if everyone was honest, they all have their kind of go-to kind of thing that they do to
Yeah.
cover up the fact that they're weak in another area. And so, like, a lot of times really amazing vocalists may not always be the best lyric writers because they don't have to be, or they have to work harder because, like, early on I wasn't a great singer. And so in my mind I was like, I better write good songs, because no one is listening to me because of my vocals, and over time I became a better vocalist, but in the moment I was like, I need to overcompensate for this other area. And so I found some really awesome, I grew in one area because I was weak in another,
Interesting.
and so then there's some people who, if you're an amazing vocalist, you can sing the phone book and it's interesting, but but the lyrics may not be that interesting. So then you may have to work later on to grow as a lyricist. But for me, I was like, this is all I got right now, because I'm not going to be the great singer that I want to be, So I think it can work either way. And then so I don't know that it's limit is the word. I mean, maybe limit is the word, but sometimes your limits or sometimes your challenges actually create opportunity for creativity,
Right.
you know?
Which is interesting because I feel like the challenges, part of viewing the challenges as a reason for your growth, I feel like that's something that comes with experience. And again, I feel like I'm talking out of my experiences and some of the other people that I've been talking to. It varies from individual to individual, but I find that it's very easy to compare yourself to others when you're younger and basically
Yeah.
set the standard for yourself. And if you can't perform at this standard, then you're not doing it quote unquote right. You know what I mean? And I feel like with age and with experience, you start to be able to look back and see where your weaknesses are and then see that your positives or that your strengths are actually beautiful and that you should maybe hone those things. I don't know, like you start to make educated decisions based on your life experiences. So for me, I always find it fascinating to find out what people chose to focus on early on, because it definitely dictates how your career turns out, you know? And it seems like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from a very young age, it seems like you were very much aware of balancing sort of your strengths with your weaknesses, because there's plenty of people that fixate so much on your weakness. If I I mean, I would argue it's part of being young, to kind of fixate on what you're not good at. But it seemed to me, and again, I could be wrong, but it seemed like you were very much aware enough to think to yourself, okay, I can improve in certain areas and I want to improve on this songwriting area. Like, is that how you approached it, or was it just, you just liked it more and you were like, hey, you know what? Let me just do songwriting more because I'm not good in this other area and I just like this better, if that makes sense.
Totally. I think it was more just a real time kind of thing. Like I would play a song for my friends and they, I was like, okay, cool. John Mark's playing a song, but then I'd write a song and they'd say, whoa, what did you just say right there? That's really interesting. And so you're like, okay, well, it seems like people are really into this. So then I would sort of double down on maybe being a lyricist or trying to write more clever type lyrics, but yeah, I don't know.
It's one of those things where we have to rewind time.
Yeah, I know. You have to go back. I don't know. I wouldn't, like, thinking back, I wouldn't think of myself as a person with a ton of awareness. I think I was just trying to fit in and trying to belong. And I realized that most of my friends were better musicians than I was. I was like, well, where am I going to fit? So I think more than anything, it was just trying to find my place.
Interesting.
And when I realized, like, for some reason, people really liked the lyrics that I was writing, I started to kind of double down on that, And I think that can become a crutch as well. Then you're sort of like, well, I'm the lyric guy, so I'm not going to focus on growing in this other area. But the truth is, like, melody is really important too.
Yeah.
So really, it's been the last 5 years, especially the last 2 or 3, I've really started to focus on melody writing,
Really?
And the combination of those two things is incredible. Yeah.
What made you want to focus on the melody writing? Like, I think you were just basically saying how at some point you kind of have to realize not to get boggled down into one mindset. But I'm curious for you, was there a moment, or maybe you were listening to someone's album, or maybe you were performing and that you realized, hey, I would like to spend more time figuring out better melodies and how to make them better, or something like that? Was there a moment, or did you just gradually decide that?
I think I gradually just decided that. I think every time I'm doing a new record, I sit down and think, like, okay, what can I do better on this record than the past record? And I was listening to more. So I think I grew up listening to, I grew up listening to a lot of music, but I feel like I started listening to more pop music, more R&B music.
Nice.
And I was like, what makes this music so great? I was like, it's the melody. It's not always the lyric. It's the way the melody and the lyric play off of one another. And so I kind of challenged myself. People maybe in certain streams know me more as a lyric writer. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to be a lyric writer, but I also want to be the lyric writer who writes the great melodies too,
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I get in these little, a lot of it is just kind of selfish. It's just like, what kind of music do I want to create? What's exciting, And I'm like, and so I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to work on my melody writing. I'm listening to more radio music and radio music from the 50s and 60s, R&B music, that kind of stuff. I'm like, what kind of melodies is going on here? Or how can I expand? I guess a lot of times, like, how can I not make the last record again?
Yeah.
How do I make something different?
I feel like most musicians have that similar mindset. You know what I mean? Like, whether they're artists, whether they're songwriters, or whether they're just, instrumentalists like me, I feel like we always kind of have that thing inside of us that doesn't necessarily want to do the same thing over and over. We want to always challenge ourselves within reason, right? But for you, like, I'm totally curious, as you were getting into more songwriting, because I just thought of this, and I'm generally curious what you have to say about it. You said you were starting to listen to more pop stuff from the 50s, and then you grew up listening to a lot of R&B when you were growing up. Are there any broad differences that you can tell on melody when it comes to the 50s and maybe what you grew up listening to? Because for me, the first thing that comes to mind from the 50s is like straight up that classic rock and roll and doo-wop. Like, that's the only thing I can think of from the 50s, maybe a little bit of jazz, but those are the predominantly pop things. Versus like the 90s pop stuff that I grew up on, I'm thinking boy bands, I'm thinking, a lot of R&B artists, maybe even early rap. So I'm curious for you, like, are there some differences that you noticed right off the bat as you started exploring melodies and started to improve in your songwriting? Did you notice any major differences in how melodies have changed, or songwriting in general has changed from then to now? And I know it's a pretty broad question.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious what you noticed.
That's definitely a huge question. But I think that, some of the melodies that I was writing earlier on, that are maybe more inspired by, more sort of like 90s, early 2000s rock, or even like the Springsteen and the Dylan stuff. It's like they're super wordy. Um, but I think the more pop melodies are a little more simple, not in the sense that they're dumber. It's not a dumbed down version as much as it's like, hey, I don't want to give people any more than they want,
Hmm.
So it's more of a disciplined kind of thing, So
Yeah.
I could write a more complex melody, but I'm like, I don't want to, if I want to give people just enough, I want to make them rewind, and listen to the song again. So I want to write a melody that they want to hear again instead of giving them too much. So for instance, on the new record, um, one of our rules for the most part was, um, if it doesn't absolutely seem like it belongs, then it's gone. You
Interesting.
know, it's like we just cut out anything that didn't immediately feel like it fit. And I don't mean whether it was weird or not, because there's probably some weird stuff. But as far as like, I'm not going to sing a melody or a phrase, or we're not going to play a melody or phrase not one more time that it needs to be played.
Interesting.
Unless we're going to be purposefully excessive. And then there's a moment we have like a minute and a half string section, but that's because we're being excessive on purpose,
Interesting.
you
And how
know.
do you decide? I mean, I think you were already starting to explain it, but how do you decide definitively that a certain part isn't good enough or it isn't what you're looking for that song? Because as you were saying, I feel like it does take a lot of discipline. I've been a part of plenty of writing sessions. I'm not a writer myself, but I've seen how it's done. And to me, it always amazes me how producers and songwriters are able to you guys are, I mean, I'm not sure if you behave this way. I'm assuming you do, but from what I observed, it's almost as if you're behaving on a budget. This is the metaphor that I use. It's almost as if like a song has a budget, and as you're making the song, you're kind of sampling different melodies, and everything has a value. And it surprises me how quickly some of these songwriters I've seen can be like, you know what, that melody's cool, but nah, never mind. And to me, like, because I'm a drummer, I can get fixated on certain phrases or certain things that I like because I've worked hard to make these things. But I'm amazed at how quickly these songwriters and producers just cycle through ideas. They're like, oh, that's cool, but you know what? It's too much. That's cool, but you know what?
Yeah,
It's too low. That's cool. It's just too fast. You know what? This is the one. And that's it. Boom. So I'm curious, like, do you behave that way? And how do you decide, like for your new record, how did you decide when something was just right and when something just wasn't working?
totally. Well, I think our rule was basically like, if we have to ask the question, then it's gone. You know,
Interesting.
like there's a point where they're like, all right, we need to do a double chorus here because just everyone feels it. Like we have to. Do we do the bridge one more time? And someone be like, well, that would be cool. I was like, yeah, it'd be cool, but do we need it? And it's almost like, well, if we're asking the question, then like it's gone. Does it work without it? So it wasn't like, I wouldn't call it a minimalist production wise, because there's a lot of weird little things going on, a lot of textures and things like that. But as far as the part itself, for instance, like I love Tom Petty's whole like "Don't bore us, get to the chorus." So a lot of my songs have like a 2-line verse,
Huh.
you know, and it's sort of like, all right, well, if we get there with 2 lines, no reason to write 4,
Interesting.
and as soon and honestly, in the past, I wrote really long songs, and we'd do things over and over, and it was a little bit more atmospheric, or maybe you jam a little bit, but on this record, I didn't really want any of that. I wanted it to do just what it needed to be done, you know? So it's
Yeah.
sort of like, if it feels good, we'll keep it. But if there's ever a question, and it's not a question of whether or not, is this going to work commercially, or is this going to fit the radio? It's more like, let's see if we can create the most exciting and catchy thing that we can possibly create within reason.
Yeah.
And so we just kept trimming it, trimming it. So a lot of the songs are like 3 minutes, which I guess that's normal for a lot of people. But a lot of times in my past, I've written 5, 6, 7 minute songs. So for us, we were really trimming it down.
That's 5 minutes is definitely a little bit longer than people are used to nowadays. I mean, if you
I
look
know.
back at music from what the 70s,
Uh-huh.
I feel like having a 7 minute song was the norm. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You needed that
Hmm.
3 minute guitar solo somewhere in the
I
middle.
know.
But
Definitely.
you know what's crazy? What I thought of when you were explaining whether you needed something or not. it kind of made me venture off into this world where I feel like, and I think this is self-explanatory, but I think it's important, especially for some of the young up and coming songwriters to know it's that the important part is to hone in on what's important to you, right? And I'm assuming that's what you do, because when I think of what's important to the song, I don't know why, but I keep thinking of Michael Jackson a little bit. I was watching this documentary, and I can't remember the name, but I remember Quincy Jones talking about him. And Quincy Jones was saying how, I think the song was either Smooth Criminal or might have been Billie Jean. I'm not so sure. I don't remember. But I remember him saying how he was complaining to Michael that all his intros were too long, that they were just, I mean, all his intros are, when you think about it, Michael Jackson has like minute and a half intros and then he starts to sing. And Quincy wanted to cut all these down, and he said that Michael's response would always be, but it makes me want to dance. Like, and I want to dance. And so they would keep it. And these songs are all, for the most part, they're all classics, right? So that kind of rings a bell to me, you know, that to Michael in his songwriting process, the important thing to him was to dance, which I feel like most of us can kind of get that feeling from his music. Mm-hmm. And so for you, would you say the important part was to get to the message? Would you say, like, in musically wise, in that retrospect?
I think more than anything, I just wanted to create something that made me want to listen to it again. You know, and like for me, it was like, how can we sort of make this so exciting that we're going to want to rewind it? You know, and I think in the past, like I've made music more like, you know, hey, what does it feel like to be inside the song? Let's get inside the song. Let's be in the song. You know, and this time I'm like, can I, because I've never tried to make pop music. And maybe that was really sort of the thing for me, is like, I know that I'm not a pop writer for the most part, you know, like, but if I was going to take my sort of weird existential ideas and create pop music out of it, what would it sound like then? And so that was kind of the idea, you know? And so I was like, okay, well, how do we get to the point very quickly, you know? And then how do we not hang around too long, you know?
Yeah.
So that was kind of the idea. Like, can we like pretend we're making pop music in a sense, in the sense that it's almost like, you know, it's almost like there's a, you know, biologically what people are looking for in a song.
Yeah.
You know, like scientifically, you know, what's going to be like, so catchy that, what am I trying to say here? It's
well,
almost.
No, I think I get what you're trying to say. I think the idea of being, and again, I think I could be wrong too, but there's a reason why top 40 and pop music is the way it is for the most part. Like it's, some people can sit there and say it's very formulaic, and actually, as you explore every decade, you start to notice these patterns. I mean, I would argue the first actual like pop songs formula was probably doo-wop. No one ever complains about doo-wop, but if you look at any doo-wop song, you've heard them all. And I love them. Don't get me wrong. They're all, I know so many of them, and I absolutely love them. But I mean, come on, everyone knows the 4-chord phrase and the high-pitched quartet. All of it. It's all the same. And so I think what I have learned is that every decade we sort of have, as the younger generation evolves and they decide what they like, the industry kind of models itself around that, and then other music evolves from that into different genres. And so I think what you're trying to say is that pop has a formula, not because someone sat there and like wrote it. It's because it's just kind of how it evolved. You know what I mean? Like it's what people like. It's the length that people like. And you're sort of trying to mold some of that, but still keep your uniqueness. You know, you're basically applying your uniqueness to that formula and seeing what happens. Am I wrong?
Totally. No, not wrong at all. And I thought it was interesting too, to like figure out how I can say something really weird and make people want to listen to it again.
Yeah.
You know? And so what I was going to do is like, okay, well, I'm going to sing about this existential idea, you know, with stars, you know, how scientists talk about how, like, you know, our particles came from stars that exploded millions of years ago, you know?
Yeah.
And so how am I going to sing about that and make it interesting to people? I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go all out on the musical side, as far as like, you know, what is like insanely pleasing to the subconscious, you know? and try and please people on the subconscious level musically, and then sort of maybe challenge people to throw some weird ideas at them in sort of the subject matter.
Interesting.
You know,
What are some of
so, but also I think it's also interesting to look back over the years and see how technology changes the way not only we listen to music, but the way we create, you know? So like, I think that because people have access to so many songs, I mean, millions of songs,
hundreds of
'cause I even
millions of
remember
songs, man? So
hundreds
many.
of millions of songs. Has it even hit a billion yet? I mean, I
I
wouldn't
don't
be
know.
surprised, right?
Yeah.
But like, I spent thousands of dollars on CDs growing up. And I probably had, I don't know if I ever had 1,000 CDs, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, that's what I had growing up. But now people have so much music. It's like, if you don't hook them pretty fast, then it's like, well, you're competing with like the Beatles and Michael Jackson and Beyonce. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? You're competing with everyone because they all have it on their phone. So I think that, well, not only that, and I don't even think this way necessarily, but you get paid when people listen to your song twice. Back in the day, they just bought it, and that's
Yeah.
all you got paid. Now it's like, I need you to listen to my song 400 times, you know? And so I don't know that that's a conscious thing, but I think that maybe subconsciously, you know, people are making songs a little bit shorter
Yeah.
because it's like, hey, I want you to listen to me again. And I don't want you to get bored because I'm competing with a billion other songs.
Yeah.
So, you know, but I feel like that directly influences the way people make the music.
I mean, I agree with you 100%. I think it's something that we don't normally think about unless we start talking about it like we're doing right now. But it is
Yep.
interesting how, because of the way the music industry has evolved as a whole, our attention span has gotten a lot shorter. I don't know. I'm curious for you because there's a couple of things I want to ask, but for you specifically, in the genre of music that you're in, is shorter better, or does it even matter?
I don't know. I don't know that it matters. I don't think about it so much as what fits the genre, you know.
Right.
I will say, like, because I'm sort of in and out of maybe the Christian contemporary world. And what's interesting is that I feel like the tempos are slower in
Yeah.
Christian contemporary music, which is really interesting. Like Christian radio is going to be a little bit slower, you know. As you listen to most hit songs per era are about the same tempo, like by a few clicks, you know, if you compare them. And so but in Christian radio, it's the same. It's just they're a little bit slower. I don't know why exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe that like it's a little bit more focused on a message or on the words, you know. But yeah, I don't know exactly if short songs are more popular in my genre or not.
Yeah.
You know, I think I'm not on the radio a bunch. I mean, I've definitely written songs that have been big radio hits, especially for other artists. But really, that's when you really start talking about time, you know, because they'll totally not play you if you're too long.
Yeah, for
You know,
sure.
and so you got to do the short version.
Well, yeah.
You know, but then if you're doing a lot of licensing and stuff, they cut you down anyway to fit, you know, the commercial or the
Exactly.
movie or whatever.
You have to
So I
fit
don't know
that
that it
time
matters.
frame. You have to fit that like
Yeah.
60-second time frame that they've
Yeah,
got.
totally.
How does it feel like as a songwriter? And this is actually something I wanted to ask for so long.
Sure.
And I'm just happy that I have the opportunity to ask you
Yeah.
specifically. How does it feel like as a songwriter when you've written something for an artist, then that music, you know, does well, is successful, is licensed, and maybe even goes viral sometimes. But the idea is that that song does well, and your creativity pretty much played a big role in that. What I'm curious about is, how does that feel? Do you feel, what I'm getting at is, I feel like most people nowadays are starting to get more interested in songwriting specifically. Like they want to know more about songwriters, but maybe 10 years ago, no one even cared that much, I would say. Now
Yeah.
it's starting to, like, there's an interest definitely going around in the music industry. So for you specifically, do you feel like when you see one of your pieces of work doing well, do you want people to sort of know that you had a hand in it? Does it matter to you at all, or just seeing it succeed, just seeing the song succeed, is that more than enough for you?
For me, just seeing the song succeed is enough. You know, because if a big artist cuts the song and it's their main single, and then that's a great, just to be honest, it's really great for me financially, which
Right.
means because I'm an independent artist, which means if they're doing really well with my song, it means, um, I'm able to make the kind of music I want to make and not have to think too much about, sales and that kind of thing.
Right.
When we have several songs doing really well for other artists, I use that money to make my own records, you know. And then I know people who, because when you're in a certain genre and you do a certain thing, you've got to maintain that audience,
Right.
you know. But
Like we
but
were
that's
saying,
always been tough.
their attention span
Yeah,
is short. It's very,
it
very
is
short.
very short. And a lot of times they want you to do what you just did again. And I get a little bit bored there.
Yeah.
So it's actually nice to have finances from, across the spectrum coming in so that I don't feel like when I'm writing a song, last thing I want to do when I'm writing a song is think about how am I going to make money with this song?
Yeah.
That's the last thing I want to think about. When I'm writing a song, I just want to write the best song that I can write or express what's happening with me in that moment,
Yeah.
And so the, songs that, so other artists doing well with my songs has enabled me, to be more creative with my own work, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
But honestly, a lot of the songs like got kind of big like years after I wrote them. So like David Crowder recorded a song called How He Loves. I wrote that like years before he recorded the song.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like, I'd played it a bunch. I was kind of done with it. Not that I didn't like the song anymore, but it's just sort of old to me and I was ready to move on. And so then it's really nice. He's doing the song. So the song lives on. And now I'm sort of in a new season, writing new records and new songs and maybe moving a little bit away from that style, maybe a little bit, in different moments,
Yeah.
So it's always, and like it's hard to make a living in the music industry. Like it's really, really hard. And there are different challenges now than there used to be.
Right.
And so I'm really grateful anytime someone records one of my songs. Like it's a huge honor.
I'm happy for you, man.
So,
And I think that's
yeah.
one of those.
Well, thank you.
Well, honestly, I think it's one of those things that many people, it's like a dream for many people. And the fact that you're one of the very lucky few that have that, and to know that you're very grateful and appreciative over having that opportunity, it's something good to share because the music industry, like you're saying, I think many people have different opinions about it, but we all can agree that it's in this weird limbo state where not many people know what's going to happen to it. It's still sort of trying to operate like it was operating back in the 60s and 70s, and it's not working. So there's a lot of change happening right now, and it's just a big jumbled, not a mess. It's just very, very foggy, I would say. And I think
totally.
To have your own little piece of the pie where you can live and make your own creative music, I think that's a dream scenario, in my opinion. And for you, I guess my question then would be, from this point on then, so you've written successful songs, you're working on your own albums. Do you have any aspirations that to basically reach new heights? Or is your aspiration to just keep on creating really, really good music as long as you possibly can? Or maybe you have a dream of having one of your own songs on your own record hit it big time. I don't know. I'm curious.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely love for one of my songs on my own record to hit it big time. That would be great. I mean, for me, like, I love the idea of like doing big shows,
Yeah.
like for me, it's all about the creativity. So, like bigger shows means I can get more creative with the production, it also means sustainability,
True.
it traveling a little bit more comfortably, so you can do it longer. It
No one ever
also
talks about those
means
small little tours, man. You're squeezing in the
I know.
vans.
Oh, I know. I did that for so many years.
They're
Like,
tough. Those are very
I know.
tough.
They are. And then the older I get, I reached a point where I was like, all right, if we don't notch up by the end of this next tour, like I'm done. Because, well, first of all, I don't trust anyone who hasn't toured in a van. Like I've got friends who like did their first tour on a bus, and I'm like, I love you as a person, but I don't trust you. Like I don't respect what you have to say. I'm kidding, but you know what I'm saying. Like
that would be like having a limo as your first car. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Born on the tour bus, but I did get to the point where I was like, all right, I got to be done with the van. Then we bought an RV for a while. We toured in the RV. We had bunks in the back of the RV, and that was nice. And So we do the bus thing for the most part now. I'll still jump in a van for like 3, 4 dates in a row. And that sounds really like bougie. Oh, you won't go out without a bus. But you're doing 30 dates, you're doing 60 dates,
It's
and
tough.
your body gets beat up. You get tired. The shows suffer, your home life suffers, And when you're young, you can do it, or at least I could. Maybe I just need to be a healthier grown up now. But in my 20s,
You're like, maybe
in
I
my
gotta eat
20s,
more
I was
fruit.
like,
Maybe I have to just eat more
no,
fruits and
exactly.
veggies.
Totally.
No, it's
But
true,
it
man. It's
it
true.
makes the music more sustainable,
Yeah.
But I'd like to do bigger shows. I'd like to be more creative with the shows, and all that takes money. But I'm not complaining about money though. We're doing good, and I don't need anything. But creativity, sometimes it takes money to do things.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where this is a topic that could spread on its own. Like it's very,
Yeah,
very
totally.
complex, and I unless you've done it yourself, it's very hard to gauge how much money actually goes into doing a production. And there's a lot of things you said that I'm curious about.
Yeah.
Number one, then, would be in terms of touring. Then, for you,
Yep.
you basically are saying you reached this point where you have evolved, or you're basically working on evolving to that next step where it's a little bit higher production value. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Well, I really want the shows to be a story.
Mm,
Not like I tell a story, but I mean I want the shows to take the audience from one place to the next.
got it.
And I want to be able to do that with the technology, with the lighting, with the sound. I'd also love to it'd be awesome to travel with a horn section.
Oh,
You know what I
yes,
mean?
absolutely.
It'd be really fun to do those types of things. So we can do some of that, but like all that costs money. You want a good horn section, you pay 5 guys to come out and play with you. Or I'd love to travel with a choir. That would be awesome too. Right?
Yeah. And let me ask
You
you
know,
this,
some
and
of
this is just like a random curiosity. This is something that a lot of artists have shared with me, just confidentially. But it's the thing is when and again, this could be different for you, but I'm just genuinely
Sure.
curious. There, in the music industry, I feel like there's different tiers, right? There's the AAA tier that we all see, like the Beyoncés, the Ariana Grandes. There's like the B tiers, like all the opening bands, basically. The C tiers, people that are kind of just trying to make a living. Anyways, my point is, sometimes it takes so much effort just to take command of the tier that you're in, and that you're finally in it. You're making some profit, you're making some money, you're making a livelihood, you're comfortable. Let's just leave it at that, right? Which is very difficult to achieve in the music industry. So sometimes once you achieve that and you're proud of that, a lot of artists are faced with that tough choice. Do I leave this comfort behind and risk it to reach that next tier because it takes more money, it's a bigger budget, and sometimes you don't get that profit back? Or do I just kind of count my blessings and stick with the tier that I'm in because I'm doing music for a living? Like, that's a huge thing that most people never get a chance to do. So my question for you is, are you, as you're trying to evolve your production and your career, are you at all concerned about that? Or are you very much like ambitious in the sense where you're looking forward to evolving? Because to me, it sounds like you have a good head on your shoulders. It sounds like you value balance, and you know yourself, and you know what is important. And so I'm not worried whether or not you can do it. I'm genuinely curious what fuels your decisions. You know what I mean? Because many people listening, they're aspiring to be a songwriter or whatever, would kill, to just have one song on someone's album, right? And then they'll be good for the rest of their life. But it seems like you want to tell a story, at your own pace. So I'm curious, where that fuel comes from, like where that ambition comes from, if that makes sense.
Totally. I feel like for me, like when I wake up in the morning, I have to do 2 things to be okay with my day. And not I mean, maybe even subconsciously. It's like I get to the end of the day and I haven't done these 2 things, then I feel like I wasted my day. I need to get something done. I need to accomplish something, and I need to be creative.
Yeah.
It's like if I feel like I did something creative, like I experienced a creative thing, but like I wrote a part of a song, like even just a part, or I came up with an idea, or even if I wrote, it could be some days as small as like I wrote an awesome Instagram post today, but like I created something. It's like I created something today, then I got something done. I moved the football a yard down, or one of the 14 footballs that I'm trying to get to the end zone. I moved it down the path. And so for me, like when I think about not having goals. So like honestly, like my life is like, as far as I'm concerned, like I'm happy in my life, with my house, my car, my dog, my family. Like I'm really happy. But for me, I need a goal to get out of bed in the morning. Like I got to have something to accomplish. I got to feel like I'm conquering something,
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, and maybe it doesn't matter if I ever get to that next level, but I have to constantly think about that next level because that's what keeps me excited where I am now.
Yeah.
So like going out and doing shows, playing for 400 or 500 people a night is awesome. I love it. But part of the reason that I do good at playing for, 4, 5, 6, 700 people is in my mind. I'm like, we're going to kill it tonight. And then next time I'm going to play for 1,000 people. But even if I never notch up, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's still like something about the goal of like, not even 1,000 people. But guess what I'm saying is like, next time I'm play for 501 in this market, people, I'm going to have a connection with these people. And it's going to be such a connection that they're going to have to bring other people with them because something real exciting happened while I was here. But for me, it's a little hard to be, I don't want to use the word complacent. That's a negative word, but for me, like I've got to have a goal. I've got to have a wall that I'm pushing against.
Yeah.
It's almost like working out or something. I've got to have some sort of resistance. I have to push until I meet the resistance,
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it's like, it doesn't like, like it would be awesome if I got to headline at Madison Square Garden. You know what I mean? Like it'd be awesome to headline. I've opened up for bands at Red Rocks. It'd be awesome to like sell out Red Rocks or something. I don't know that that's ever going to happen, and to be honest, like I know what you have to do that, like, and I think that a lot of people feel like you're going to reach a point when you can just coast, and it's just not true at all. Like
Yeah.
the people, when you reach a certain point in your career, all the energy it took you to get there, it takes the same amount of energy to stay there.
Yeah.
And so like I got to have something to push against, but I'm also like, and this is honestly where I'm conflicted, to be honest, because like I do have these goals and things I want to do, but also sustainability, is a huge factor because I could, I could take more gigs, I could be out on the road more, but at the same time, like if my family life is falling apart, like I'm a wreck,
Yeah.
like the two, and I don't guess a lot of, like, I mean, a lot of people do a lot of their touring when they're younger. Like I'm 40 and I'm still touring and I'm loving it. But at the same time, I have kids who are growing up. And so my work life and my creative life and my home life all have to work symbiotically. They all have to work together, So I guess that's the difficult part. How much there's no guarantee, right? There's no guarantee, but I know that I could get further down the path if I put a lot more energy into what I'm doing, And at the end of the day, like the people I know who kill it in any one of these spheres, they work harder than everybody else does.
Yeah.
And so part of the equation is, what are you willing to do that other people aren't willing to do?
Yeah.
And so every day I have to wake up and I have to make that decision. Like, all right, what am I willing to do? I'm not willing to sacrifice my family, but what else am I willing to sacrifice? If I'm going to go to that next level. So that's where I get conflicted, because part of me is like, it'd be awesome to, if you're selling out Madison Square Garden, right? It's because you're also selling out everywhere else in the country.
It's true.
And you're not selling out everywhere else in the country unless you are touring really, really, really hard, or unless you're just one of these, like, acts who was just so famous back in the day. But see, if you're them, you were doing that back then.
Yeah.
So, it's not one thing, right? It's sort of like, you sort of got to, it's all or nothing. You know what I mean?
No, dude, there's so many things you said. I wish we had like hours to talk about it, but there's like a lot of things you just chimed in on that I'm like, my eyes they just opened up. Like, yes, you're absolutely right. And here's the thing. Here's a couple of things that I have to chime in on that. The first thing that I love about what you're saying is you're basically emphasizing that you're making the choice every day to set attainable goals. That's the thing I took away from that, is that I think nowadays, unfortunately, people more in my age group, like I'm 29, so I'm not necessarily super, super young, but I'm not necessarily old either. I'm somewhere in the middle. But I
Yep.
recognize this in my immediate sphere around me, that there is this sort of culture where people are so obsessed with the successful people, like the people that are at the AAA level, in any industry. I'm not even just talking about music industry. I'm talking about entrepreneurs, all these things.
Yep.
People have set these high standards for themselves in the sense where I want to be the CEO or I want to be Beyonce. And rather than look into themselves and figure out what are the goals I can achieve today. Like, again, going back to your metaphor, the footballs, you have 50 footballs, but which one can I move 1 yard? There's just
Yep.
this lack of satisfaction that I see, where if you're not at the end goal, you just should not be happy with yourself. That's the kind of thing I see a lot around me. And unfortunately, it took me a couple years to learn that. Like, I definitely was part of the problem in that sense, but I feel like I came to the realization of the importance of balance and understanding what you're capable of, what goals you can achieve, and never limiting yourself, obviously, like looking at the metaphorical football field, but understanding that if you're comparing yourself to Tom Brady in this metaphorical field, well, you're going to feel crappy the whole time. But if you look at your own game and you're like, all right, I have these footballs, which one am I willing and can move forward today? And that's, to me, it took years to learn that. And I'm glad that you said that, because I think that's realistically not only what leads to success to some degree, but I think it leads to a well-balanced and happy life, which is ultimately the goal at the end of the day. That's the one thing I always want to share with people. And that you're right too, that a lot of these individuals that we idolize that are at the AAA level, they should be there because they've worked harder than everyone else, and that's their life. Their life is, honestly, for the most part, lots and lots of hard work. That isn't a lie. It takes lots of hard work to stay relevant and be up there. And many of us don't have that. That's just not what we're passionate about. We like what we see, but when we actually realize how much work it takes, I would argue most people would shy away. They're like, oh shoot, yeah, I'm not sure if I'm willing to give up my my time to do that. Like, it's crazy. But anyways, I'm rambling. But the idea is, I think you no, dude, I love what you said. I love that you basically use that metaphor of just like, I have ambitions and I have my goals and I try to move one forward every day. And if I do that and my family life is great and I'm happy, then I've lived a good day. And I think that's honestly one of the best ways you can live your life, especially as an artist. And especially nowadays too, when there's so much competition and stuff around us. I think that's the takeaway.
Yeah, I do too. And even those AAA guys and those AAA artists, like none of them stay there their whole life.
True.
Like,
Very
I mean,
few
I
of
am
them
shocked.
do. Very few of them do.
There are a few that, like, I'm shocked how long they're able to sustain, but very few of them, very, very few can stay there their whole life, And so even they have this sort of arc, they reach the top and then they, and so like the joy, I don't think, is being at the top. This sounds cheesy, but it's just the truth, is like the journey is really the joy.
Yep.
And if you can't find the joy in it, you're not going to find the joy there either, because success is not a thing that like lasts. Success is a like everything else, success is a passing thing, however you define it.
Yeah.
And so you got to learn to love your daily successes. And the truth is, I think if you learn to love your daily successes, ironically enough, that contributes to the greater success down the road as well.
True.
But I think if the only thing that matters to you is that end game, you're going to get there and be disappointed, because it doesn't last very long.
It's true, man. Man, what a wise words. I'm really happy that you felt comfortable sharing that. No, it's true, because I always want to provide as much insight as I can to people who are aspiring to do the same thing. And I think it's important. That's one of those topics that need to be chimed in more of nowadays. And so,
well, totally.
No, continue. Sorry.
Yeah. And I was gonna say, even John Lennon, after the Beatles broke up, it took him a long time, to start writing his own music.
Yeah.
And I saw a documentary, and the reason was that he realized he was competing with the Beatles, the greatest, band of all time, most popular, most influential band of all time. And he was afraid,
Yeah.
And so like he had to get to the point where he's like, it's okay if I'm never as successful as the band I was in. I got to be able to do it just because I love it.
Yeah.
And John Lennon says, this is one of my favorite quotes: life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. And I think he may have realized that during that season, because he thought, I'm never going to be as big as the Beatles, because no one is the Beatles. Even the Beatles individually are not the Beatles.
Yeah.
And so you got to learn, you got to love it. You got to love it.
I'm writing this stuff down, man. I'm putting it in my journal. I'm going to look over it. Man, to kind of end things off, I wish I had hours to talk to you, dude, because we're going to have to do a version 2 of this, because this is really cool.
Definitely.
But I know that your new album, People with Dreams, just came out, right?
Yep.
And so
Yes.
for me, I'm curious for your fans, what is the message that you're basically trying to share? And I think I can guess based on the title, but I'd like to hear from you the overall theme that you'd like your fans to take away from it. What would that be? And I know everyone's definition of music is different, but if you had to if you had the choice of everyone understanding the theme, what would it be for you?
Yep. For me, I want to say the theme is gratitude. Is every person is a dream, and your life is a dream. And I think too, even all the stuff we're talking about, I think the reason I'm talking about is it's kind of what I've been going through the last few years. I have these dreams, these musical dreams. Then I realized, like, my kids are my dreams too.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can get so focused on the thing you think you want that you miss out on what's happening right there in front of you. So to me, that's the theme of the record is, that every person is a dream, and the people around you are your dreams. And it's not about success as much as it's the people you meet and walk alongside of on your way to success or not success.
True. Very true.
And your attempts. It's the people who are with you in your attempts to succeed and to grow.
And they're happy for you when you do those attempts.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Wise words from my man, John Mark McMillan. Thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful episode. This was fantastic, man. Thank you.
Yeah, man. Well, it was a pleasure. I loved it.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with John. I know that I definitely did. I say that a lot on this show, but it's absolutely true. I'm always blown away by the mindset of some of the creative people that I have on the show. I always leave inspired to create more cool stuff for myself, and that's honestly the goal of the show. As I said at the beginning of the episode, I really believe his story inspires many to create their own music, because nowadays we're living in a very weird time, and I know a lot of you guys out there are experimenting, making cool stuff, and I just want to take this opportunity to encourage you to explore that creativity. Whatever it is that you want to do, I definitely encourage you to dive in and explore that message inside of you that you want to express. And don't be afraid of it. Be creative. Let it go where it wants to go. I think John is a classic example of what happens when you're able to hone in on what it is that you want to try and say and choosing an art form to convey that message. I think it's clearly obvious that he's very talented and very good at what he does. And I think all of us have that potential to be really good at what we want to do. And so again, I want to encourage you to take the time. Now's the time to create something that you're proud of and that you have fun doing. And hey, if you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to stay tuned in, because I have way more artists coming on this show. There are so many people lined up that I want to go ahead and release. There's only so many I can release at a time, but definitely stay tuned in, because I have so many interviews coming your way.